Thank you so much for being here. My name is Gina Cian. I manage the Alumni Sharing Knowledge Program. We are at the Career Center. Many of you look very familiar to me and have been here a few times. But just so we see who's in the room, how many of you, this is your first Ask Breakfast that you've attended? Well, it's a testament to the three of you who can bring in this many new first-timers. I invite you to keep coming back. We do this every month. We have our schedule in the back that you can see. We have different topics. We bring in wonderful speakers like today. But also, as you've already experienced, you get the chance to network with people who are in the room before as well as after the presentation. So do come back and meet a lot of individuals here. In addition to our speakers, usually in our room we have alumni and students. So Alumni Sharing Knowledge is a career mentoring program. We have over 1,200 people who can offer you career guidance. They can do practice interviews with you. And many of them are here in the room that you can meet today. So if you are an Ask Mentor, can you please raise your hand if you're an Ask Mentor? There's a lot of them here. How many are alum but maybe not quite Ask yet? I hope you think about joining our efforts. It's a wonderful experience. How many grad students do we have here? Grad students? How many undergraduate students? As always, it's a wonderful mix, which makes the conversation very interesting. I also think we have a mix of majors who are here, and it's probably because of our speakers and the different backgrounds that they represent. So before I get into the intro, I just encourage you to check out a little bit more about the ASK program. ask.depaul.edu is our website, and we have more information in the back. As you were sitting here, you may have already been looking at the speaker bios, and if you saw the announcement, you probably read it as well. So I won't go into too itemized of the bios for the speakers, and I'm sure that they will speak a little bit more about their experiences as well. So let's get started. After this, you'll get a chance to ask your questions, so take notes. Write down little questions that you want to make sure you want to follow up with them, and you'll have an opportunity to do that. So let's get started with a little bit of the information about our speakers. So to my left here is Jorge Zavala. So Jorge has a variety of experiences. Particularly, he's very interested in kind of the Asian side of the world, and has done a lot of community service and a lot of neighborhood, not neighborhood, but social service, local support over there. I like his motto, which you probably read in his bio, which is think globally, act locally. So I really like that. He has a degree in international studies here from DePaul, and really went to Southeast Asia to discover different things about your career, right? Yes. So he'll speak a little bit more about that as we continue on. He also speaks a lot of different languages, so you'll learn about that as well. To his left is Michael Kalala. Michael, another person who has traversed through different career areas. So he started in science, undergrad degree from biology and psychology here at DePaul University, and a master's in psychology from the Chicago School of Psychology. And so started scientific research, moved towards business, and he's now the manager of Internship Desk, which helps international students and domestic students as well kind of bridge the gap and succeed in their careers. And he'll talk a little bit more about his experiences traveling in Brazil and other places in Europe. I forgot to mention Jorge is also, apart from these wonderful things he's done, is also the creative director at a wonderful PR agency, Prestige Du Monde. Has also starting a new coffee company. Yes, that is correct. And that I'm sure he'll talk about. And is also the youngest person, make sure I got this right, who started a grassroots campaign for Congress in the 4th Congressional District of Illinois, and was the youngest person in 2013-14 to run for a congressional seat. So that really takes a lot of courage to say some change needs to happen in the neighborhood, and he's that type of person. And to Michael's left is Kelli McGee. So Kelli is another person who's kind of meandered through different experiences. She got her economics degree here from DePaul and an MBA in international business. She started in accounting and worked as an examiner eventually at the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, and really somehow got ingrained into the Vincentian spirit of service. She's done two Peace Corps tours in Moldova and Romania. And she'll talk about that a little bit more, and that really drastically changed her career trajectory, and now works at a nonprofit organization working with the homeless population in the US, and is the director of operations there. So please join me in welcoming Jorge, Michael, and Kelli. It's very hard to speak about the bio because they've done so many things, as you can tell. So why don't we give you a chance to share a little bit more about yourself. What do you currently do now, and maybe what your experience was like when you were studying here at DePaul? Start with you.
All right. So my name is Jorge, like Gina mentioned. I was actually an international studies and Japanese major. So are there any international studies majors in the room today? All right, nice. Good major. So I'm actually the creative director for Prestige One Media, which is a boutique public relations and media agency that I helped found in 2012. Before that, I was actually living in Southeast Asia. So immediately after graduation, I got an English teaching gig, which is, for those of you interested in living and working abroad, is the easiest way to enter a country. However, when I lived in Bangkok, Thailand, I find myself more interested in human rights work, so I began working with the UN within the human rights branch in northern Thailand. So for those of you who maybe visited the region, you know that human rights is a big issue out there. Upon my return to Chicago, I worked with several non-for-profits in Chicago and ran for Congress from 2013 to 2014. With all of that, DePaul was always a big part of my experience. Living and breathing the Vincentian mission was something that I really enjoyed, having been a part of several organizations on campus, everything from STARS, serving as a STARS peer mentor, to working with the Student Leadership Institute. I would say that those are definitely organizations that leveraged the opportunities that came my way.
As Gina mentioned, my name is Michael Kalala. I was a psychology major, biology minor here at DePaul. I think DePaul was an asset just in my background because of the variety of courses you get to take here. Personally, with my major, I bounced around before I kind of centered on cognitive psychology and biology. After doing a master's, I kind of figured, okay, what do I want to do with my life? Do I want to go the business route or do a PhD? So I decided to pursue business. So over the last 3 years, I've been working in many, I guess, kind of a management rotation program, but specifically probably integrated marketing would be the best way to describe it. I've traveled across Europe, Central and South America. My most robust experience was probably in Brazil. So after my master's, I had to choose, okay, do I want to go back to Italy, teach English? And I was like, okay, wait a second. Let me try to do something to expand my comfort zone. Turned out being the best decision of my life. So I had a great experience in Brazil. I started off, like Jorge mentioned, teaching English through a company out of New Zealand, actually, called IDHQ. And then at that point, I got involved with an NGO there and started working on marketing and just generally building the NGO in one of the slums in Rio de Janeiro. So that brings me here. I'm currently working with international students. The company works with international students specifically. There, I work on marketing and a little bit of operations and strategy, so it's been great.
I wish we could hang out all day and talk about all these experiences. The international work is definitely the thing that excites me the most in my career. And right now I'm working with DePaul USA, DePaul with a small p. We share the same values, but we're a non-for-profit organization that's completely separate from the university, despite all appearances, because my office is in the university. So our subsidiary, called DePaul USA, is one of 6 in the world under the umbrella of DePaul International, and so we provide services to individuals facing homelessness in 6 different countries. I started my work in this DePaul group, DePaul with a small p, in Depaul, Ukraine. And so my first experience there was sort of as a consultant to make an evaluation of the operations there and make recommendations for change. And when I left, I was acting director. So it sort of snowballed once I got there, and the organization changed very quickly and required some different contributions on my part. And so another exciting thing about working overseas, working in the developing world, is that everything changes and it can change very quickly. And that's to say nothing of what's happened to Ukraine since I left. The road to this work in DePaul USA, DePaul International, DePaul Ukraine was primarily stemming from DePaul University, the values, the Vincentian values, the emphasis on service, that we get here from the university. And even though I was able to apply my economics degree right out of college, it wasn't my time to sit at a desk, I thought. So I went to Peace Corps and I worked in Moldova as an organization development person. And so there were opportunities to work with local organizations. Nonprofits were getting started in Moldova when I was there, and I had the opportunity to work for local leaders, the mayor's office, the local schools. And so if you've ever thought about Peace Corps, it is what you make it. And so I think the only deterrent for overseas work should be, you know, family concerns or something like that. It's not about money, you know, the money works itself out when you do what you love. And it's not about being far away from home, because we have internet now and Peace Corps volunteers get cell phones. So I think that for me, the Peace Corps experience absolutely launched my career and made me who I am.
I'll start off with you then, since you started listing kind of some of the countries you visited. So I was curious, if there's any other country you've visited and lived at, please mention it as well. But talk a little bit about the transition of working there, of living there. You know, did you know anyone there? Was it difficult to talk to the locals? Did you know the local language? Did you have to pick that up? Did you have any safety issues or safety concerns? Kind of the living day-to-day kind of transition. Can you start with you?
Sure. During my undergraduate experience at DePaul University, studied in Paris, and I was shy and I hung out with Americans during my time. I lived with a family, but you know, I didn't feel like I learned French as well as I could have, and when I got home I realized that I didn't have any French friends, and I thought that was such a shame. And so my only two goals going into the Peace Corps were to make friends and learn the language. And so that foundation just put me in touch with everyone who would approach me. And I think as a person who looked local, that was easy for me. I didn't have safety concerns. I looked like everyone else. And Moldovans are very friendly, hospitable, warm people, and so that was, I didn't ever encounter any safety issues.
I think, you know, initially making a transition to, for example, Brazil, I went there, I didn't know anybody, but I did some diligence on the organization I volunteered with, IVHQ, and it looked pretty legitimate to me. If anyone in the audience is considering an organization that they're kind of hesitant about, feel free to reach out. I'm sure all three of us can kind of take a look at it and help guide you whether or not this seems like, you know, a good choice and it's safe. Initially getting there, it was a brand new experience. I probably did have some hesitations, but what was important to me, you know, growing up with, I was very close with my grandparents, both on my mother's side and my dad's side. So on my dad's side, they're from Italy. My mother's side, Germany and Poland. What I really wanted is to experience something similar to what they had, to see, okay, putting myself in their shoes. So I didn't really focus so much on being nervous or giving it kind of a second thought. I was just like, okay, let's dive right in. Also was reading a couple books at the time that, you know, influenced my decision. When I first got there, I arrived at 4:30 in the morning. A guy named, actually, Jorge picked me up from the airport. We couldn't communicate because I couldn't speak Portuguese yet. So generally speaking, I think learning the language is important, but kind of like Kelly said, you know, people, she said Moldova, they were friendly. Brazilians are extremely friendly. They're extremely welcoming. So when I first got there, you know, you're walking down the streets by yourself. I got lost my second day for about 6 hours walking around. It's a little nerve-wracking, but I'm sure that's also kind of the experience of an international student here in the U.S., and I think that's, speaking, you know, on behalf of all three of us, probably something we were all looking for. But generally speaking, you know, you just have to be mindful of your surroundings. In any country, including the U.S., things can get bad fast if you go in the wrong, you know, get in the wrong area. So it's just about, you know, I wouldn't say necessarily being conservative, but being aware and asking questions and getting advice of others when you go forward to do things. But we can give more details later.
So I primarily lived in Thailand, but we worked heavily in Singapore and in Indonesia. All three countries are awesome. They're very hospitable towards all kinds of people. So whenever I had these really cool, I call nerd chic glasses that I used to wear. And everybody thought I was a local for the longest time. So when we would go to marketplaces in Thailand or in Indonesia, I would get spoken in Thai. And fortunately for me, I learned how to speak Thai, so it was never a problem. But the good thing about Southeast Asia, it's a region that's developing very fast. Learning the local language definitely helps, but English is really the medium of communication out in the region. So if you're on there for business, going to a place like Bangkok may seem a little intimidating just because 95 degrees, it's humid, it smells like fried food everywhere. It's like a 360 from what Chicago really is, but that's really part of the experience, as we've mentioned. And the best place to really, I think, go for folks who perhaps are interested in going to Asia but really want to take a comfortable leap really is Thailand, because like I always say, it's a microcosm of Asia. There's all kinds of food, there's all kinds of people, it's one of the most international hubs in the region. You have the comforts of home, but you also have obviously the local Thai experience, which as our folks up here have said, the country's actually quite nice, the folks are very hospitable, life there is very good. There weren't really safety concerns until probably halfway through my time out there when martial law went into effect. Like the Thai military took over the country for a while, and there was a curfew that was enacted. But for that region of the world, they're very nonviolent folk for the most part. So even while martial law was going on, we would still go out at 10 at night and say, hey, we want to go grab a beer and some fried chicken on the street. It's okay. Like it was comfortable. For women, it's the most comfortable region, I think, for a solo female traveler. Women are very, very, I worked with a lot of teachers and a lot of UN folk who were coming from the US, and they said that it was the most comfortable place for them to travel. Some of them would travel in groups, some of them would travel solo, and it was just a really great experience for them to feel so safe and so comfortable in a region that has nightlife, that has beaches, that has a little bit of everything for everyone. So it was a good place.
You kind of touched a little bit on why you made kind of those decisions to live abroad. If you haven't, please do mention it as well as what motivated you to actually leave your home country. But also, more importantly, was it an easy or hard decision? What did your family members think, your loved ones? Were they supportive of you? Were they kind of like, what are you talking about? Live over there. So share maybe the people around you, how they reacted to you, and how did you handle homesickness, if you even felt it at all? Let's start with you.
All right. Homesickness, I think, happens to everyone, just being away from your surroundings. I was fortunate enough to have traveled a lot growing up, so that getting used to difference was something that was normal. But going for weeks at a time was normal. Going for a few years was definitely a challenge at times. I'm very close to my family, so initially that leap was confusing, I think, to my family members. They're like, well, you have the opportunity to work here. It's like, why travel 3,000 miles to the other side of the world? And I was 21, I graduated early from DePaul, and I was very fortunate that I had a lot of great people within the International Studies Department who really guided me to make that leap forward. I initially was just going to go to law school, actually, but I said, I'm 21, this is going to be the rest of my life. Like, you have the rest of your life on. No offense to anybody who's in law school or anybody who's studying law now, but when you're 21, when you're in your 20s, I think it's a great opportunity to really experiment with your life a little bit with regards to your professionalism. Go out there and get an interesting job. Go out there and get dirty. Go out there and play with dirt in Tanzania. Go out there and try some fish balls on a stick in Southeast Asia. You really have to get out there and experience the world, especially for those of you who are working in business, where we're planning on teaching. The world is a big place. DePaul, fortunately for me, showed me that, especially as an international studies major. I think we have the tools, we have the background, but we often don't have the direction necessarily. Oftentimes your professor will say, well, the world is yours, go get it. And you're like, where do I start? It's such a big place. But I think it is a challenge, but coping. Technology is a big deal. Skype was a friend of mine for quite some time, whether it was a weekly, conversations with mom or Skyping with your best friend back home. I really facilitated just transitioning at times, and then a lot of times you just need people who speak your language. So sometimes you would hang out with people who were either from from the US or people who are from Australia, just English-speaking folk. But the fun thing about traveling is that even if you learn the local language, everyone's going to try to speak English to you, so that you always have a sense of community abroad, that people always want to engage with you, even if it's just on basic dialogue. So those are some coping mechanisms for me. I think a lot of folks were able to make that more comfortable, lead a little bit more comfortably that way.
I think initially for me, wanting to go there was an easy choice. As I've told Gina, it's really just, sometimes you'll get resistance from your family. Not everybody, but that definitely happened. But again, you have to go for what you want, you know, out of life just in general, I guess high level. So if you're considering it, you know, if you're studying international relations, really if you're studying anything, but especially international relations, business, maybe you're not, maybe you're like me, you're studying psychology and biology, but you're looking to build upon your professional profile and grow, I would say do it, go abroad, try to live in at least one other country, anywhere from, you know, if it's 2 weeks volunteering to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months, maybe stay out of the country for a while. You'll get a different perspective. And I think before you can go on, you know, a lot of students that will message me will say, oh, I want to go into consulting or something like that. And you can come from any background and do that, but before you can really go into consulting, you have to understand a lot, right? But really any major, to go to the next level, I think you need to definitely experience other cultures, right? So one of my favorite authors, Timothy Ferriss, talks about being in a room and having mirrors all around you. And that's what it'll do to you at first. Again, it was easy for me, but part of the organization that I initially went to Brazil with, as I was promised online, was to be working with you know, individuals from all over the world. Okay, so initially I was one of 2 Americans. A few other Americans showed up from San Francisco, but everyone was from Australia, New Zealand, Denmark, Sweden, you know, country you name it. A lot of individuals from Australia. So there were some you know, aspects of other people going through what you went through. Maybe that's a good way to make that transition, and it probably helped me in ways I, you know, can't even fully appreciate yet. But like Jorge said, learning the language is very important. Even if you can just take a couple introductory classes before you go, once you get there, no matter whether or not you think you're good at languages, when it's all around you 24/7 and you have no option, you'll learn it quickly out of necessity. So, you know, necessity will definitely cause you to innovate. Other than that, I think it was just after master's, just looking for something different. And I would encourage all of you to do that. It's easy to get complacent. I think as you, I'm figuring out, maybe as you get older, you kind of like, okay, well, I have this, this, and this. But I think it's important to, while you're in your 20s, kind of break that mold and step out and say, okay, let me take a second to reflect on what I'm doing. You might change your career direction. So that's what happened with me. So I would definitely encourage it and just say, you know, jump for it.
So this is about adaptation, right? I think I'm a bit older because my technology experiences were much different. I didn't have a cell phone in Peace Corps. I had 1 American in my town, no other foreigners in Peace Corps. In Ukraine, I was the only person who spoke English. I had to learn to do my job. 2 people had the courage to try to speak English, and we worked it out, but most people were too afraid to, you know, embarrass themselves in front of the boss, I guess, or they just didn't have the training. It was too expensive to call home, you know, and back in the day. I would have AOL Messenger chats with my parents for like 20 minutes, once a week maybe. We'd exchange emails, one phone call every couple weeks that would last like 10 or 15 minutes because we all thought we were in a tunnel. Mm-hmm. And I was much more disconnected. I think that for that reason, our Peace Corps friendships were very strong at that time. We became friends very quickly because out in the rural areas, we didn't have anything else except each other, you know. And then that lends itself to being closer with local people too. When you cut off those connections to home too, it really gives you the opportunity to connect locally. And so I think that after 5 years living in Eastern Europe, I really have a lot of those behaviors. And I've been at a bar down the street, you know, for a snack after work or whatever with some friends, and I was with a Mexican American, a Persian girl, and a girl from Ecuador, and the waiter asks me where I'm from. Where, you know, I order last, and the answer, like, it was just absurd, and I can't imagine, you know, and he's from Eastern Europe, so he must have picked up on something, but it was just the most bizarre thing, and everybody laughed at us. And then we started to speak Russian, so it was just like these crazy experiences that come about, I guess, because of who we become after the experience abroad. And one of the things, I made a couple of notes about the questions that Gina sent us beforehand, and I think that the real reason that I like her and turned on so much by the international work is finding these absurd connections with people that seem to be so different from us, but you know, we make these friendships that last a lifetime, and I think that that's what'll make the world a better place, and we can all be a part of that. And so I think in terms of adaptation, sometimes it is letting go of all those safety things that we have. But at the end of the day, we all do it. You know, you call the local people who speak your language, or you know, you bake something that reminds you of home or whatever.
So you guys have alluded to kind of how it affected you, your career and all of that. I'm curious about discoveries about yourself or about other people. You know, did you have stereotypes or like things going in, and did it change after some experiences? So maybe, and I won't point to any direction if you're interested in sharing your experience. So how did it change you, and maybe and how you changed your perception of the world? Any of you want to start there?
I'd always excuse me. I'd always wanted to go to Asia. I studied Japanese. Ironically, I ended up in Thailand. But when I first got to Thailand, one of the things, well, rather, before going to Thailand, I just had all these, I guess, stereotypical images of an exotic, jasmine-scented country with elephants. And I mean, elephants do exist, mind you. They walk on the street during traffic, and they step on cars and stuff. It's real. Unfortunately now, well, fortunately and unfortunately, the Prime Minister has abolished elephants in the capital, so you won't be seeing elephants walking down Sukhumvit Road at 5 p.m. during rush hour. But one of the things that I really learned about myself was the need to just appreciate my surroundings a little bit more. Being in Chicago, I grew up in Chicago. You take things for granted. You take your friends for granted, your family, your surroundings. But being forced to interact with like a 360 of an environment, a 360 of a culture, really pushes you to examine your values, who you are as a person, all the things you believe in. So you can say that you're an X, Y, and Z type of person at DePaul in Chicago in 2015. You step into a new place, a new zone, and you question your values. Do I really believe in this thought process? Is everything I learned at school relevant? Is it irrelevant? A lot of the things I grasped from my experience really was that you take everything you learn and every experience with a grain of salt. So each experience is your own. Every experience is what you make of it, and it really pushes you to become a better person. So for me, getting into even coming back and starting a public relations firm, media firm, the experiences living in Southeast Asia really encouraged me to do that. Working in human rights, we were dealing with really heavy-hitting issues. So at 21, 22, and 23, I was working with victims of human trafficking, people who were victims of abuse, children, orphan children in northern Thailand camps. And my job as somebody who was that age was really just to act as a translator, to act as a liaison, to say, hey, you want to study in the US, let's teach you some basic English and get you that visa. You need medical supplies, let's do some grant writing and get you there. So something that was that heavy hitting really required me to find an outlet that was comfortable. And for me, nightlife, public relations, doing fashion shows and going to lifestyle events really helped me cope with that, and it was something that I really enjoyed. And coming back to Chicago, it's something that I continue doing just because the experiences that were planted out there really were the precursor to everything I do now. So all the events that we host, everything that we do now is always done with a purpose. So whether we're doing a cocktail reception for 200 people or a gala for 400 people, everything we do is always with a purpose. So whether it's raising funds for children in Chicago or raising funds for battered women in Southeast Asia. Everything has a purpose. So that's how I was shaped by the experience, and it's different for everybody. But like I said, it's what you make of it, and you always take everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I think where I hit on a key note here is ultimately the way an experience abroad is going to change you. It's going to be a very personal thing. You know, you can definitely travel to just fill up stamps on your passport, which is fine. You know, it's kind of maybe an act of consumerism, or you can travel to really have a transformational experience. So if you're open to it, it can change your perspective. I would say, no matter kind of the way you view yourself now, if you're willing to consider another perspective, I think, and you're open to that, you will get other perspectives, and that might change your view on things. Personally, it changed me in many ways. Mainly, I guess, kind of with all three of us have maybe a human rights theme to things. I initially wanted to do something to kind of just give back to the world, and you can do that in many ways, no matter what you're studying or what you're doing. But again, starting to teach English in the slums, working with kids, you know, you think even just a pair of shoes, you take that for granted, right? But these are kids just wearing swim trunks, you know, all day, but realizing how happy they are, right? So you get the sense of you can be happy with a lot less than you think. So you start to embrace that, right? So I didn't live in the slum I taught in. I lived in maybe like a step up, like mid-level, maybe sort of like a suburb, like a neighborhood like Lincoln Park-ish, but not nearly that nice. So for me, it was just learning, you know, hey, look how happy these people are with so much less, so that it'll put things in perspective for you. But again, you know, it's just really a personal thing. Everyone brings something else unique to the table when you go abroad, or even have different experiences here in the U.S. So it will make you more self-aware, and then I almost, in many ways, I became less American, but I became more American because I was understanding the reason that we do certain things here. Ultimately, I kind of learned, you know, each country, no matter what your criticism is, no country's perfect. You have different, you know, different aspects of different countries. But even, you know, beyond Brazil, I'm finalizing dual citizenship in Italy right now through my dad's side. So, you know, any of these countries, they'll all show you like a different way of life, and you can figure out, I guess, okay, this is something that, you know, is in line with kind of my personality, and then you can go with it, I guess, if that fits. But it's a very personal transformation, I guess, high level. So
something that they said kind of reminded me of one of my greatest fears when I was in Ukraine was that I would mess up some good thing that they had going on, because like he said, you know, every country has its strengths and weaknesses and everything, and while we have the best intentions of making life better for people that we serve, it's also pretty presumptuous to think that they need life to be better for them in many cases. And so what we think of, how we each define better is different. The greatest challenge, I think, for me working as the acting director of this charity in Ukraine was identifying the things that functioned better there than I thought they did in the U.S. What aspects of their culture make services to homeless people stronger, and the things that I would instinctively want to attack, you know, for inefficiency or just not being the way that I knew them to be. You know, I just had to stop myself every single time and say, why are they doing this? What is the impact of their style of doing this? And how do I take that out? How do we export that to other subsidiaries in our global entity, DePaul International? And so as Peace Corps will teach you, you know, you bring your culture and you take their culture home. And so that was something that I tried to do in Ukraine, was to bring over things that would enhance what they were doing and make them feel better about what they were doing, and that they were giving better services in their eyes and under their perceptions. And then also to identify those things that we could apply in other countries and export that, because like he said, there's great happiness in poverty. There's just because someone's poor doesn't mean that they're spiritually poor, but we can see great spiritual poverty in this country and a lack of joy in the work that we do. And so I think that there's a great exchange to be had. And so as global citizens or workers in the international field, I think it's our job to be that broker in both directions. It's not about us helping make the world a better place. It's got to be a two-way street, I think, to really affect meaningful change.
It's a good reminder. I'd like to take a pause actually and open it up to this lovely audience here. And I know many of you in the audience actually have traveled abroad, lived abroad, and done a lot of other things as well. So does anyone have a question that you want to pose to our panelists that are on your mind? John?
Sorry. I think many of us here maybe work locally now, and for you, what's kind of experience you can transfer from your local experience to national experience? So in the other words, if you go back like 5 years, what's kind of skill you want us can equip ourselves and to improve like to your position now? So what is the
Take it. Go. Excuse me. Try. I think that. Oh, excuse me. I think now, you're asking if we went back to the countries where we were, what would we bring differently?
yeah?
Okay.
How I mean, what kind of skill or experience you work locally can is transferable?
Oh, like across the board?
Yeah.
Okay. I think cultural competence is just transferable across the board. Whether you're working in Chicago, whether you're working in Zimbabwe, being able to embrace diversity as a strong suit is essential. Chicago, I always say, is just based on all the global cities I've been to, Chicago is a diverse city, but we're not a global city. I think Chicago needs to really work on embracing its diversity in the workforce, just like other countries have done. That's what's developed Thailand's economy, growing at 6.5% a year, embracing that Thailand isn't an isolated country anymore, even though for years it was, it's the only country that was never colonized in the world. So it prided itself on just being very, very diverse from the beginning. So using diversity in the workforce, using diversity in language and culture has really made it its strong suit. Other skills that I think are very transferable are the being able to act as a liaison, as a catalyst in whatever field you work in, whether you're working in biology, whether you're working as a lawyer or as an ambassador. Always being willing to give a little bit more of your time and effort than others. So when martial law was taking place in Thailand, a lot of people were asked to stay inside. But a few of us said, well, there's a lot of people who still need resources. There's a lot of people who still need to drink water. So, you know, us and a few other folks who were working there, we walked, because there were no buses, there was nothing running, we walked into town 30 minutes at 9 p.m. at night. And mind you, there was a few of us, and Thailand's a relatively safe place, but we had to carry everything back on our own. We did this on our own, and you just really sometimes have to take the initiative and go that extra step, and that'll make you, I think, successful in any field you choose to be a part of. Hope that answered your question.
Piggybacking off that answer, I think cultural competence, being flexible. You know, it's great, you study hard, you have good grades, maybe you have okay grades, you have some professional experiences, you have some volunteer experiences. A 4.0 won't necessarily make your travel experience better or your cultural experience. So like Jorge said, being aware, Chicago is a great city as far as giving you exposure to diversity, but it's on you to go get the global experience you want. Okay, so it's taking that sense of agency to heart. If you want a book to help you become flexible, the obstacle is the way. So it focuses a lot on stoicism. The obstacle is the way, right? So if you're hesitant about studying abroad or just working abroad, you know, maybe make it a personal challenge. Other than that, I would say learning to be flexible is probably the hardest thing for people, because you become set in your ways. And I was working with a student, not through DePaul, through another university yesterday, and it's like, wow, the student is quite smart. They're actually brilliant, but they're extremely inflexible. So that's something that, you know, like Bruce Lee says, be water, okay? So.
Kelly, are there other things you want to add to?
I think they got it, yeah.
Eric?
Hey, I have a question about some of the practical side, living with abroad. So obviously flexibility, cultural stresses, responding to that is very important. But on the practical side, it's going to be working abroad and having heading from I'm looking at learning a lot about tax and legal implications and how did you have any particular sources that were very helpful for you in navigating that when you're abroad for several years or you're going to come abroad and then dealing with the kind of disconnect to practical legal and tax questions?
Where are you going, actually?
Well, I'm heading to France.
Okay. Oh, that's easy. No, I'm just kidding. It's comfortable abroad. The reason I ask is if you're anywhere in Western Europe, everything becomes significantly easier for you to do with regards to your taxes and the legalities. France is in a unique situation where the laws are a little different out there. But I always encourage people to register with the embassy. So register your passport, register yourself in case anything goes wrong. In case you have any, I guess when you ask learning the laws, I think it's just a matter of you taking that initiative and learning, getting out there and saying, okay, what's legal, what's not legal, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. But for a good summary of a local country's rules and regulations, the U.S. Embassy or even the CIA fact book online provides a wealth of information for folks. So that's something I looked into. It can scare you a bit just because of all the, as a country, we like to input a lot of fear into our travelers. So a lot of the stuff that they put in regions, like, oh, there's a lot of X, Y, and Z activity in this region, and you get there and it's super safe, it's completely okay. But always, take everything with a grain of salt, like I mentioned before. Learn about your surroundings. For taxes, I think on the website of the local embassy that the local Franco-American embassy will have information on Americans abroad doing taxes. So you can actually download a form and print it out, file all your things, and you can send it into the local consulate or embassy in the country where you'll be, or just send it directly to the IRS back home. But usually it becomes a little easier and less muddy if you just send it directly to the local embassy.
From what you guys mentioned, it seems like there's always an exchange of like learning different practices when you go abroad. And I was wondering if, not necessarily with Western values, but your values as an American, what values you wanted to bring abroad, and how over the course of your experiences, your desire to share those values or your own value of those values changed.
I think just being open, kind of like Kelly was talking about earlier, I think that there is kind of a predilection to have this colonial attitude when you go to a country. Like, oh, you need to learn English, or you need to think this way. That was something that I made a conscious effort to buffer against while I was abroad. I didn't really want to bring that kind of attitude. There were some people that did have that, not just from the U.S., but just from anywhere. My answer, I guess.
A lot of people in Eastern Europe and the developing areas would say, why did you come to this place? This country is so poor, like everybody wants to get out of here, everybody wants to go to the US, why are you here? It stinks. And I was their cheerleader, like I was the person to be positive and tell them about what I loved about their country. And so I think a personal value of trying to, bring light to difficult situations was something that I really had to cling to for my own sanity, but also to support them too. Is that helpful? I can't think of other specific values, but I guess that's part of growing older, is like figuring out what values, you will make like yours for your whole life.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Maybe speak to the different phases that you went through while living abroad and what ultimately made you come back. I lived abroad for a few years. I know that when you're first abroad, it's exciting. You're meeting a lot of new people, everything's new and fresh. But then maybe after a couple of years, you start to get homesick and start thinking about why you want to come back to the States. And what was maybe the reason that you decided to come back?
Definitely, you go through a lot of phases. So you initially, I think, go into it depends on the type of person you are. If you're an extrovert, I think you initially go into like the honeymoon phase of your trip. So everything's awesome, everything is great, everything is so cheap, everything is wonderful, everything stays open until 5 in the morning. Just kidding. Partially. I think the first few weeks, everything's exciting and new, and all the smells and sights and everything are wonderful until you get the stomach flu. And then everything goes the opposite direction. You're just like, I can't eat any of the local food, it's making me sick, you long for pizza and burgers. Like honestly, like the first 3 months, third month, I kid you not, I ate an omelet on the street and not good. I ate burgers and fries for like 2 weeks, and you start changing your perspective, not in a bad way, you just become realistic with your surroundings. You're like, well, there's a lot of things I probably shouldn't be eating because my body isn't used to it. There's a lot of places here that are, it's like, oh, well, everything is so different from here, I just want to like stay in my room and Skype. Not that I did that, but a lot of people would. And I think part of the challenge is really embracing the different with what you're comfortable with. And one of the things I really learned at DePaul, and one of the things that was really ingrained in my time here, was really to step outside your comfort zone. And that's really what it was. No matter how hard something is, you really should make it. I would encourage you to step outside your comfort zone, to say the least. Brought me home. I'm very close to my family. After spending 2.5 years out in Southeast Asia, I wanted to come back and see my family, see my friends. And at that point, I wanted to try something new. So human rights work was great. It was something that I enjoyed doing. And I really wanted to transition into a new industry, which I did, and I'm really excited to do so. But on the opposite part of that, I guess we flipped the coin 3 times, I'll actually be going back to the region at the end of April to expand further on my business endeavors for the coffee industry and our media conglomerate. So family is always, for me, has always come first, but you know that there are always opportunities to go back in my case. So I always say, do what you think is best, but even as Mike has reiterated, everything really is a personal challenge, and it's really up to you to see what fits best in your life at that point.
I did get a little homesick immediately at the 3-month mark, but I might not be the best person to ask that question to, because I can't get enough of going abroad. So I'm constantly, whenever I get a chance off at work, etc., to either go back to Brazil. I just went back mid last year. So you will get homesick, like we talked about before, practical tools, Skype. But I would really, if I were you, just continue to push yourself to stay long enough to get something out of the experience. Other ways to combat it, let's say you're getting antsy in the city that you've been living and working in, take a weekend trip. For example, Brazil, other countries, a lot of them are big countries, but even if you go to a smaller country, let's say like Italy or France, there are multiple places to go within there. I did want to touch on your question, the gentleman going to France. You could speak with, there's like an international tax firm, CDH. They could help you. They work, CDH.
CDH?
Yeah, or the French American Chamber of Commerce too. I wanted to make sure I mentioned that for you. So any of the chambers of commerce, you can go and get great advice. We work with some, at really all of them at the current place I work, so I can give you a referral if you want. That's really it, I guess, for the homesickness question, though, as well.
The first thing in our first meeting in Peace Corps, the director of the country said, if you left a loved one at home, spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, just leave now, go home now. And so he just made no buts about it. He's like, it's going to get to you, so let's just take care of that now. And we did, I think most of us have the 3-month honeymoon phase, and then some people left then. Some people, I came in with a group of 65 into Moldova. I left with about 35 because people had issues. They could not deal with the local kids making fun of their language. The lack of cheeseburgers in their town, or the lack of communication with their families. We didn't have cell phones, or Skype. So those things get to people. On the other hand, there's folks who go in it, and say, I'm in this for 2 years. It's a 2-year assignment, no problem. Some people love it. Some people never go back. And I know guys who have used the overseas opportunities and found out they don't want to live overseas forever. And I have 3 friends who are doing that. They have no intention of coming back. Actually, more than 3 friends that I can think of off the top of my head. And it's a personal thing, but I think some of us are cut out for it, and some of us just aren't.
So please join me in thanking our panelists today.